So last night we only have this one game to talk about, really. Well, I guess Game 5 happened as well, but I don't really have too much to say on that because the series is closed at this point. But Game 6, Knicks Pacers was last night. The Pacers won at home to send the Knicks packing. Just an all around solid game from their players. Tyrese was pretty solid. Andrew Nimhard, who had a rough series, I thought played really well last night, especially when you're still you have a banged up Neesmith. You got to get minutes and you got to find someone that can guard Brunson. I think he really stepped up in that regard. Thomas Bryant out of nowhere is giving you good minutes, hits 3 threes, decides he's a shooter. Pascal Siakam has been phenomenal this whole series, really, outside of Game 1. And he gives you 31, and he actually won Eastern Conference Finals MVP. I don't know if I agree with that, but he definitely had a pretty good case. But he gave you, like I said, 31, and then everyone else just chipped in. And on the Knicks side of things, not Jalen Brunson's best game from a scoring output standpoint, only 19 points. But it really came back down to their defense. It wasn't really their scoring, but they just couldn't get stops. Me and my brother-in-law Grant were talking about it, but they put Tyrese Halliburton back in it at the 9:18 minute mark in the fourth quarter, and they scored on every possession for the next 6 minutes. The first possession they didn't score was on an Andrew Nimhard turnover with 3 minutes and 4 seconds left. And so when you already have a 10-point lead and then you go on a 6-minute stretch where you score every time down the court, there's just no avenue for the Knicks to really make a comeback in that game. Because they couldn't get stops. Their transition defense wasn't good enough. But congrats to the Pacers. I'm happy they're moving on. They're a really fun team to watch. Hopefully it makes for an interesting finals. I don't want to talk too much about that because we're going to have it's our own segment about that. But what are your thoughts on the game, JP? I don't know how much you really got to watch because, like we said, we were at a wedding last night. So I only got to catch kind of the back half of the game.
I went back and watched the first half.
Okay.
And caught up on everything. It was like Game 5. Like I gave the playbook, the plan that they needed to execute, and they execute that in Game 5.
Sure.
They hold the Pacers under 105. No one goes for 30, and then you come back to Game 6 and Siakam goes for 30, and you don't hold him under 105. So kind of the issue there. Again, you had to stop the Pacers. You just can't outscore them.
Yeah.
You're going to have to defend them and force them to turn the ball over. It'll be a huge reason that I'm going to pick the Thunder when we talk about the NBA Finals. But, yeah, I didn't have the exact number on that, but I remember watching that 6-minute stretch. It was just insane. That as just a stat of the game is incredible. 6 straight minutes, no turnovers, and scoring every single time. Yeah, you're just not winning any game if you're going to allow a team to do that, or a team does that against you.
Sure.
It felt like for New York that, I don't know, I think the depth was again the issue. And I talked about this in the last episode. Like, I felt like if the season ended and they didn't make the NBA Finals, they were going to have to make a change, and I feel that way right now.
Well,
I don't think Tom Thibodeau can return.
He may looking. So there's something I really wanted to bring up and want to get your opinion on it. And since you brought that up, immediately post game we pivoted to Cat's going to be the scapegoat. Looking at all the reports coming out, basically like Knicks players and coaches were repeatedly frustrated with Cat's execution of their defensive schemes and coverages and stuff, and his kind of seeming indifference to like playing defense. Like it was like, oh, he didn't think defense is important enough. So I could see actually a world where Thibodeau does return if they're going to just scapegoat Cat and try and get rid of Cat this summer. But yeah.
But didn't they just go get him like a year ago?
Yeah, I mean they did, but I mean it's kind of it's a business move, and if they're going to decide one they don't like playing with Cat and they don't think Cat and Brunson can work, you're going to keep Brunson. And then also if he really has just kind of been this guy that's frustrated them defensively, and he's never really been known as a good defender, and we saw it at times this series too. They may try and move on from him. I don't think it's a great summer to try and have to move on from him, but they're kind of setting themselves up to have to, in my opinion.
I don't feel like that's the right move, in my opinion. I thought Cat this season was extraordinary. He was a guy who literally every single night he was giving you 20-odd something points and 12 plus rebounds. And that is not something that's just repeatable by anybody.
Yeah.
Mitchell Robinson is never going to put up those kinds of numbers. And for me, it felt like in the playoffs, he was extraordinary as well. In the Boston Celtics series, he kind of struggles, but he was pretty critical in Game 6. And then in the Detroit series and in this series, like, he's the reason they win Game 3. In the Detroit series, he's the reason they win multiple games in that series. It's just, in my opinion, it just felt like it was a bad matchup, and it was a bad matchup because the Knicks, with the way they're coached and built to play, they're never going to be able to compete with this Pacers team because they don't have the speed to keep up with them and to outscore them, or the defensive stoppers that can shut them down. If Brunson and Cat are your two best players, and they're just not great defensively.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily know if it's the right move either. To me, it just seems they very quickly, like, that's the, like, you know, PR/media position they decided to push out and, like, make themselves. Like, that's, I don't know, that's how they decided to position themselves to the media, is like, oh, Cat was the issue.
Personally, I hate that because, like, what is Karl Anthony Towns not done that Tom Thibodeau has done?
Sure.
And Tom Thibodeau has a longer career, a longer head coaching career, and it's not just one stop as well. It's been shown every single place he's ever been that his philosophy works to be competitive, but it doesn't necessarily work to win titles.
He's a floor raiser, but he's really never going to get you over the hump. I don't disagree, and I don't necessarily like it either, especially the timing of it. It was like they almost hadn't even, like, the game had just ended. The Knicks, you know, the Finals MVP or the Conference Finals MVP hasn't even presented yet, and already Twitter's being flooded with reports of kind of Cat being the issue, and it just seems unfair, especially just that quick, that they were, like, basically ready to throw him under the bus. And that's why I'm almost like they're going to end up, if that narrative continues, they're going to find themselves in a position where they almost have to trade him, because it's a hard thing to come back from. You know, to hear that, like, oh, all my teammates think I basically am the reason we couldn't get over the hump. Like, what are you going to do? And then I mentioned earlier that, I mean, we've pretty quickly got into Knicks offseason stuff. But I don't really know if it's the best summer to trade for Cat to be on the trade market in terms of Knicks getting returning value. Which he had a great season, and so surely, you know, that helps value. But cap space is such an issue right now, and I don't think anyone. Now we've seen teams make dumb moves before, but I feel like any smart team is going to realize that you can't build around Cat to win a finals. And so, like, why would someone like Brooklyn, who does have the cap space, decide to trade for Cat? It doesn't really match up with their timeline. Like I said, he can't be your key piece, so that doesn't make sense. And then if there's any team that's truly desperate for a star, Cat's not going to be the first place you turn, because, you know, they're going to look to try and get Giannis from the Bucks or even Durant from the Suns as better options. So I don't know. I'm just interested to see how that plays out throughout the offseason. We're getting some really weird buzz at times.
Yeah, I'm not sure what is that.
I don't know what it is either, because it keeps coming and going. So every time I, like, look to pinpoint where it's coming from, it's like it's gone. But yeah.
And I feel like destinations fits for him. It makes sense in Minnesota. I know that's crazy, right?
Yeah, that's insane.
You traded for Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. I think, like, him in LA would be kind of hilarious. You could trade LeBron for Cat. That about works out cap space wise.
Yeah, I don't see the Lakers doing that.
Go
but
under the philosophy of let's try to score 135 a night, with Luka, Austin Reeves, and Karl Anthony Towns. The KD trade doesn't make any sense to me because there's no reason, in my opinion, there's no reason for Phoenix to bring in Cat like you were saying. And so, like, why would they trade away KD as well? They need to trade KD and try to get some young guys,
Yeah.
which is why a KD trade to, like, Houston or even Oklahoma City makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
go ahead.
yeah, go ahead, Jack.
No, you got it. You got it. I was just going to kind of throw in an add-on, so finish your thought.
No, yeah, I think you run it back and fire Thibodeau. That's what I would do. Bring in a different head coach. I don't have one off the top of my head, but I think that's the move. I think you have to build depth, and that is kind of that's the way to win a championship now. At least we've seen in this era that you need depth. You need more than 5 guys. You need 7 guys, 8 guys. And you think of all your previous champions. Boston had roughly 9 guys.
Mm-hmm.
The Nuggets had 8 guys at that time with Bruce Brown and Christian Braun off the bench. And even prior to that, you think of the Golden State Warriors. They were Steph Curry and then a bunch of other guys, Draymond and Clay, and Poole was great, but you had Otto Porter Jr. that played big minutes. Kevon Looney was massive that entire playoff series. That's kind of the way to go right now. And for them, if they were going to stay with 5, it needs to be 5. It needs to be 3 superstars and 2 stars, realistically, for it to work. And they just don't have that. So I think you fire Thibodeau and maybe you make a move and try to get some depth. You're not going to have any issue signing free agents, even free agents to a veterans minimum, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that would be the route I would go down personally with New York. I think you have to attack this next season.
The East is wide open.
This is our final chance to win a championship because Jason Tatum's hurt. Good chance Giannis isn't there anymore. And Cleveland's got a lot of questions. So, there's no reason in their eyes they shouldn't be the number 1 seed in the East a year from now.
No, that's fair. I completely agree. With the way the East is shaping up and how weak it is, if you're on the fence about blowing it up or giving it one more shot, why not give it one more shot? They were 2 games away this year from making the finals, so it does feel really drastic to just trade Cat after 1 year. I'm just calling it how I see it online and how the kind of the media and the insiders have already begun kind of pushing this narrative. I feel like I've seen this kind of play out before. If the move is to fire Tom Thibodeau, I feel like we'll know that sooner rather than later. You typically don't wait weeks to fire a coach after the end of your season. Is a couple day or a week type thing. So I guess we'll find out about that once again sooner rather than later. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this game played out how a lot of all the Pacers wins really do is just transition points. They win the turnover battle. Then the Knicks couldn't stop them. I don't really have tons to say on it. It just felt like kind of more the same, looking back at the other Knicks losses in this series.
Yeah, and this is just one that didn't have the crazy comeback.
Correct.
This is just one where the Pacers kind of led the entire way.
Yeah, and it was a thing too of for the Knicks to keep with the Pacers, it always relied on Jalen Brunson a lot. Cat was actually pretty good down the 4th, in my opinion, scoring-wise, which is unfair to Brunson because he had a phenomenal playoffs, but he didn't have it last night. And it would have taken something special from him to keep them in the game, in my opinion. So